next half hour, and probably will. Naturally, I know exactly what's going to happen in the next few minutes. Welcome back to Space Engineers on the Xbox, on the Series X. And this is not my survival guide. This is this. My little, or rather long, atmospheric vehicle. It's a little bit of a scout, and it's a little bit of a cargo hauler. Doesn't haul very much. It hauls as much as one of the cargo boxes can take. The reason? Well, I don't want it for anything but scooting around, helping me locate ores, and just generally taking bits and pieces to and from A to B. And it's fairly simple to build. I'm going to build it in creative, but I'm going to show you how I built it, or a design that's similar. When you're building on a single long axis like this, the best way to start is, as always, the rotor. Large grid rotor, place it down. The first thing you want to do is grind off that head. Now, some people have said you can build off connectors and so on. Yes, that's all well and good, but a rotor is safer, trust me. So if we go into my little control panel here, we're looking for our rotor. We don't need shear inertia tensor. We want to put the rotor lock on, and we want to add a small head. That is our build platform. We can build some blocks around it if we want. Make it into more of a platform. But what we want to do is we want to get some light armor blocks and use them as a way to take this build up in the air. So, first thing you're going to need is a cockpit. If you're just starting out on this particular thing, you'll find that a lot of the blocks you need to make a thing are actually already selected in your recent blocks menu. And we're going to be looking at the industrial cockpit on small grid. And start with the industrial cockpit. Now, if you look, the industrial cockpit is a wide at the back. We want an axis on our vehicle. We want to provide some lift. So, since we're on Earth-like, we don't really need to use downward thrust. We can use gravity to take care of all that. So we can pop open the build menu, and I'm going to use one of my favorites. Yes. Use the Sci-Fi Large Atmospheric Thruster. You see, I'm building it fairly similar to this thing here. This has a little bit more cosmetics on it. But what I want is the basics of the design to show you. You can always refine later on. So now you've got that large engine there. That large engine, if you look at this design here, is the only engine providing lift. If you wanted a bit more power, you could slap a second large engine on, but then I would probably be tempted to go for 3 batteries instead of 2. And you'll see in my design here that the next thing that we have is some form of rechargeable power. And these batteries here are perfect. You can pop a couple down like this. And a cargo box. Now on that model over there, I have the cargo box with its ports, the medium cargo box facing outwards like this. You can flip it like this, and if you flip it like that, then you're going to be able to make a landing platform a lot easier than trying to align it at the rear. See, that's what I've done here, look. So you have 2 batteries, 1 large thruster, a cargo container, a connector, and you could leave at that. Apart from, what you want to do is you might want to put a few blocks just behind you, a stable platform mess around with. Of course, any blocks that you add will add weight. That is your basic design here. And then what we want is we want to knock a couple of blocks out here. And we'll pop on our small grid antenna. And small grid ore detector. Now, we only have upward thrust. We have nothing else. Nor can we turn this beast. We're going to want a gyroscope. Just pop it behind there like that. So we have power, we have a gyro, we have an antenna for its name, we have our little ore detector. Now what we need is we need forwards and reverse thrust and thrust left and right. So you can mess around here with some extra cosmetic style blocks and you'll see that that won't work like that, but you can still put blocks in if you want them. We could build in symmetry mode. But you won't be able to do that in survival. For now. We have our large thruster, and having this little side piece here that I've put on also means that we can look to attaching landing gear when we're ready to do that. But for now, what we want is to think, how are we going to place our getting ahead of myself, thrusters, and how many do we want? Well, this isn't a fighter. It doesn't need to go particularly fast, and it doesn't need to do anything particularly fun in terms of maneuvers. So honestly, we only want one here, one here, now I can put them here, like this. Remember to equalize your thrust. You want as much stopping potential as movement. So you want 2 at the front, 2 at the back. If you have 4 at the front, then put 4 at the back. The more thrusters you use, the more power you're going to use, and you might potentially need to slap another battery atop this lot. So we are now only missing the right thrust. And again, it's entirely up to you how you want to put it. Thinking about it, you could them. Let's have a look. Where do I want these on this particular build? I could put them somewhere on the side, so we've got them about here. It's entirely up to you, though, really. In the end, you are the designer. Decide placement of everything on your design. I've been playing this since the PC version, but the one I spend all the time with now is the Xbox. So we have left, right, up, but now down because we're using gravity. Forward and backward. Since I want to make this a compact style ship, we're looking at trying to put the landing gear in so that we can touch down on a connector. Now, what we might have to do is we might have to make a adjustment to a connector on the base. Yeah, why not? So that it'll connect up to that connector there. There's a bit of a tip when you're dropping landing gear down on your build. If you look, you can tell which way is the correct way to face, because the heel has the shorter piston. The front of the foot has the longer one. See it? Sort of here. My suggestion as well, of course, is to always turn off auto lock on your landing gear. I'll show you that in a second. We're almost ready. Look at this. It's ugly but effective. Like my rocket, it's cheap enough to build and easy enough to repair if things went wrong. So, now, before we do anything else, I'm going to quick save by holding both bumpers down, tapping X. We want to do one thing. We want to look at this grid and we want to go into info and we want to change small grid 1348's name to whatever we're going to call it. In my case, it's going to be called the Long Scout. And there's a few things we want to do with the Long Scout before we even think about launching, flying anywhere. In theory, this should be perfect enough to disconnect from your build platform without it crashing and burning to the ground. There you go. So now Long Scout is fully free to fly. So what we do is we pop into the cockpit. Actually, what we're going to do on Long Scout first is, because it's getting darker, let's pop into decoration 1. And just for the heck of it, we're going to drop a couple of lights down on her. So, from your cockpit, first things first, tap your inventory button, go to your control panel, and you want to look at your antenna. Press A on it and push the broadcast radius all the way to the top. Come back into that menu and then select each individual landing gear, hold down the right bumper after you've tapped A on the first one, and then press A again, select all of your landing gear and pop those into a neat little group called Long S Gear. Hit save and do not leave this menu. Use the left stick, come down until you reach auto lock and turn it off. Okay, still in this menu, you want to go down to your ore detector and change its range to 50 meters. And stay in that menu because there's still some things to do. If you've built it like I have, you can press A on your sci-fi atmospheric thruster back and then hold down the right bumper and group up all your sci-fi atmospheric thrusters. Do not press right on the D-pad. You will potentially trigger the thrust override and things will go wrong. Use the left stick only, flick it across twice, up once, get a block group, and call this Long S Thrust. Almost there. Last group, stay in the same menu. Press A on spotlight, hold down the right bumper, tap A again, flick across, and Long S Lights. Put the name of that group on this. Now you can come out of this menu, and the first thing you want to do is decide where you want your landing gear. So do not press the Y button to use landing gear or connectors. In fact, my advice is to go back to your menu and change this connector name to something like Long S connector. It'll save you a headache in the long run, especially if you've got a base with lots of connectors on. So, first things first, press down on the D-pad to open up the toolbar config and go to groups. Choose your long S gear and pop down to switch lock. Press A. You can now switch lock on that without needing to use the Y button. Because if you use the Y button, watch the perils of the Y button video that I created. I'll leave a link in the description to that one. What else do you want? Well, you want a way of controlling your thrust. So, same deal. Let's look at our longest thrust and toggle it on off. Do not press that while you're in the air. Things will go bang. Then we want our lights on off. And finally, we don't have a group for the connector because we only have one, so we come down to all blocks, but we know it's called longest connector and simply choose switch lock. Now you have a working little scout hauler which you can fly around to your heart's content. You'll notice it's picked up silicon there, right smack bang where I was. 88 meters away. And when you're down on the ground, just hit down on the D-pad to lock it, up to turn those off, left to turn your lights off, X to get out, and that is your little vehicle. You can build a connector for it to lock onto by putting a hole in the platform and building a connector. You can connect that connector to a cargo box. You can have a conveyor sorter on that link so it can pull things out of your ship into your base systems without a problem. But like I said, this is more a little let's go flying, find some ore, and we'll have, in the case of this, 3,375 litres to play around with on this creative save. Of course, the more you load up, the more weight this ship will be. So bear that in mind. You may need to design another thruster. You could, in theory, pop out those batteries, drop another thruster in that gap there, then put the batteries at the back. As long as they're connected to the grid, you're fine and dandy. There's no problem whatsoever. And that's it. That's an atmospheric little vehicle. This video goes out to Woody, who has been asking about these little atmospheric vehicles I have, like my Snow Scout. Or this is the Sand Scout, which I play around with on Pertum. And I basically know that if this gets damaged, it would be easy to repair and not cost me an arm and a leg in resources. And this is the new one we just made today. Hopefully, this has given you some ideas. Reach out to me on the community tab. Reach out to me on my comments. Drop by the Facebook, drop by the Discord. You should find those links in the community tab in one of the posts. Until then, stay safe, have fun, take care, enjoy the game, and as I always say, happy engineering.